Hey y'all, I'm at Pero Like today, and we're talking with other Latino entrepreneurs about our businesses and what makes them so great.
What inspired you to start your business?
So what inspired me to start my business was I was just a meme page, first of all. So I was just doing like posting about loteria, but making it fun and modern. So I was doing, La Sirena became La Selfie, El Catrín became El Hipster, La Dama became La Feminist. And I was posting this because I wanted to represent Latinos in a modern way. And it turned out that people were like, I want to buy this game, where can I buy it? And I was in a business at that point. So I was just kind of struggling to figure out how to start this business with so much demand, because we started getting like thousands and thousands of people following us saying, I want to buy this game, where can I get it? And I just had no idea how to make a game. So I just had to start from scratch, and now we're doing really well, but it was created out of the demand that people had for the product.
What inspired me to start Todo Verde was really looking at the lack of access of good quality plant-based Mexican food and being able to create that niche for my community. I was dealing with a bunch of health issues, so was my family, and so as I was kind of playing around with different recipes and sharing it with people, they were just like, how could I get this? Where could I get this recipe? And I just saw people resonating with it. So I started with food service at local farmers markets, later evolved to catering. I did food at a concert venue for the last few years, and then I published a cookbook, and still kept seeing people really like inspired by the food and the recipes. And so most recently I decided to really focus and shift to a CPG line, a product line of seasoning, where it would help home cooks make my food in like 15-20 minutes. So that, it's really evolved, but it's always been with the center of like, how could I encourage people to eat true to culture food? Not like the spicy mild taco seasoning that you see on shelves right now, which is so crazy. Like, when in Mexico have you ever ordered spicy or mild tacos? Like, it just doesn't exist, So it's really trying to find like the nuances of our actual food.
And when you say CPG, you're talking consumer packaged goods, right?
Yeah,
okay,
that's right. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know out there.
I know. Yeah. Lesson number 1.
Yeah.
CPG.
My love for sharing coffee with my mom and dad is the initial inspiration. But then also feeling like there was a lack of growth as a Latina woman in the industry I was working in. I felt like I needed to do something. I was doing all this hard work for someone who wasn't acknowledging my work and didn't care about my growth, so I had to do it for myself. So that's really ultimately what inspired me to start Tipota Coffee.
What does your family think about you starting your own business? Do you have any background in your family of them starting their business? How do they feel about this?
Yeah, well, initially, I was in higher education. I had a full-time career track job, and my mom freaked out. She was not about it. She was like, "Mija, I don't get it. Like, how are you going to leave this full-time job? You could retire here. You have benefits, and you're gonna leave to make your abuelita's food like that." We didn't come all the way over here and do everything that we did for this family for you to kind of backtrack. So she was really opposed to it. My dad actually was an entrepreneur. And so he came here from nothing in Ecuador, was very dirt poor, and was able to really pick himself up here. And he actually started a business, a textile manufacturing business that did really well. And so summers I would spend there and work with him, and I learned a lot about the late nights, the early mornings, the so-and-so didn't show up, I have to do this, it has to get done.
Yeah.
And so he was more supportive. He was like, I know that you got a good education, we did everything we needed to do to create a good foundation for you, so if this doesn't work, you're gonna find something else. So follow your dreams. And he was way more supportive. And then it wasn't until maybe a year or two after I started Todo Verde that my mom gave me a gift. It was a chef's knife with my name engraved on it. And it was so sweet. That was her, I approve. I'm down for this, and I see you, and I felt seen. It was really beautiful.
So kind of like you, my dad was like, what are you doing? So I worked in real estate. My dad was an entrepreneur. He ran a flooring business. From that, he was able to buy property, and he, loved that I went into real estate because he was like, you can grow this, But I wanted to do coffee. My mom was supportive. My mom was like, yes, let's do it. And she gets so excited.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. But my dad was just like, oh, what are you doing? Like, are you sure you want to do this? But yeah, now he loves it. He just, you know, they're very proud. And I think as an homage to them, that's like the biggest thing for me. And they're just very proud, very supportive now. My dad, you know, is seeing that, you know, how people are reacting, how my hermanos y hermanas are reacting to it, like, too, and, like, it's really beautiful.
So, Mike, what did your parents think about you starting Millennial Loteria? Were they cool with it, or were they surprised by it? What did they feel?
Yeah, they were very supportive of me starting my own business. My mom, she was an entrepreneur. She had her own business in Guatemala. She's not here in the United States. She's still back there. She had her shop for like over 40 years. She was in interior decoration, so she was very creative, you know, and I grew up sort of in her shop. So I was seeing her make, you know, all these creative things from edredones, cortinas, all these things that she did. And, you know, I grew up around that creativity, so I knew. I also love that, you know, since she was an entrepreneur, she could have me there at work the whole time. So after school, I would go to her shop, and that's where I would be. And then I would just run around the mall because it was in a mall. So I grew up there, like in a mall in Guatemala was like my background, my playground. And so I started working in advertising. That's where I started, you know, originally. And I, you know, went up the ranks of corporate America. I became a creative director. And it wasn't at that moment that I started making Millennial Loteria. And I had to leave my job, my full-time job. And that's when I think they got a little scared because it was a high-paying job. I mean, I was like up there, and, you know, I just got in a house, and they're like, you're going to leave your job? But Millennial Loteria was just, that was my passion. That's where I was getting the opportunities. And so I ended up just focusing 100% on that. Now, it's been about a year and a half that I, you know, haven't had a full-time job and just focus on Millennial Loteria. And that's been really, in my mind, the definition of sort of success. And my parents have seen all of that. They've loved, like, my growth. But I have very good Latino parents that aren't, like, mad at me if I decide to chase my dreams out there. They're a little hurt that I'm not in Guatemala and they can't see me, but they know that, you know, everything that they did was for me to succeed. And so they're still very, very happy of what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. That creativity rubbed off for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. So do you think that with Zapota Coffee, you're getting to this point of success, of you're achieving the American dream, and do your parents feel that? Do your parents see you achieving that dream?
No, yeah, most definitely. I think the initial, you know, American dream is getting an education, and I was able to get that. So that was like the first like hurdle of like achieving the American dream. Then, you know, with having immigrant parents, they're like, you need security, you need a good job, and so actually being an entrepreneur like my dad was actually like a little scary for him, but at the same time, like for me personally, it is achieving the American dream. It's being able to start something that connects you and your community, and, you know, that's grown here in America. You know, that, you know, my parents left El Salvador years ago, and, you know, they were able to share the culture with us. And then there's a lot of us here with like that go through identity crisis and like, what is being Salvadorian? Because like you're here, for example, I like taught in China, and I met people who from Mexico, and they were like, you're not Salvadorian, you're American. But I'm just like, but I'm Salvadorian. And like even people here that are like, you're not Salvadorian, you're American, you were born here. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also Salvadorian. So like, I want Zapota Coffee kind of to like connect Salvadorian Americans to the Salvadorian culture, and ultimately like to the, you know, culture that's been passed on by our parents or grandparents.
You know, going off of what you said, like that is the ultimate American dream, I think, for my parents too, is like the education component. Like my dad was very passionate about like me getting good education from kindergarten all the way through. And they weren't really strict about what I studied in college. Like they weren't like the type of parents who were like, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or this or that.
Are you first gen?
I am first generation.
Me too.
Yeah.
But like, well, not first generation, but like graduating, from college. Like
I'm the first in my family.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah, and since then, I think right now I'm actually the only one still until my niece graduates. And so the good thing is like they were pretty open about me like following my dream as long as, again, I had that job security or something that felt like stable, like you're going to be able to buy your house, you're going to be able to do this or that. But it's just crazy to like have them see now that the American dream is like a part of them. Like I'm incorporating what I learned growing up and like the traditions from my ancestors and my grandparents, and like that kind of sums it up. Like it's not just my journey here, it's like everything I've learned along the way and like how I want to bring that with me. And I think that's really powerful for them. Otherwise, like what does the American dream really mean if like you're not inclusive of like everything that's brought you here to this moment, you know?
Yeah. I think for my family, you know, the idea of the American dream, for them, they're not here in the United States. They're still back in Guatemala. They come visit me, but they don't live here. So for me, the American dream, I think they're seeing it alive through me. You know, they didn't really have that, but they're seeing it come true for me. I mean, I came here, I was talking, you know, in the green room about how I've lived now the same amount of time that I lived in Guatemala growing up, which was like 18 years. I've almost lived 18 years here in the United States. So I've been like in both places my whole life. And so my parents, when they see all the stuff I can accomplish, you know, with like the game being at Target or at Walmart, or collaborations I'm doing with movies, those are the moments that they're like, wow, he's really doing it. He's really making it, you know. I was on a red carpet and it was Telemundo or Univision that like showed a clip of me, and they saw it on Despierta America, and they were like, oh my God, like they had people calling them, and that's when I think they were like, wow, he's really achieving like that American dream of making it out there. So it's really exciting for them and for me too to, you know, be able to accomplish all these things.
I think a couple of the achievements for me that kind of made me feel like I've created a sense of pride, like even within like what I'm doing. One of them is like being called up to start writing recipes for New York Times cooking. And
that's major.
That was really huge for me. And the first recipe that I did was my mom's nopales and chile rojo. She's from a like rural rancho in Zacatecas, Mexico. And so I was like, all right, like if you want me to contribute, like these are the types of recipes that I want to contribute, you know? And so that was the first one I did. And I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I want to make sure I get it just right. Like, do you guisar your nopales like this or like that? And she was like asking me questions. And I was like, it's for New York Times Cooking. And she's like, nopales in New York Times? Like, no lo puedo creer. Like, really? You know? And then when it finally came out, she was so shocked. I think for me, that was one of the proudest moments in my work so far with Todo Verde. And then the other one is just like my book. Like just seeing how well received it was by the community. Like it was so, for me, unexpected. Like, oh, here's this little book. Let's see if people like it, 60 plant-based Mexican recipes. It came out during the pandemic. I was like so freaked out because I was like, all this work, this book tour, everything's canceled. And no one's gonna know about this book. And then it was actually the opposite. Like everybody was at home cooking. People were trying to eat healthier. And so it just really took off. And I found out not too long ago that like the average cookbook sells like 3,000 copies.
In its lifetime.
In its lifetime. And I've done like over 25,000 so far. And it keeps growing. And so like that for me just shows like the magnitude of like how much people want this type of content, and how much I need to keep like doing this work.
No, I think it's really cool the moment you said too about how I guess from a different perspective, like seeing your mom's recipe in New York Times, for her, I think it must have been like just incredibly proud for her as well, and for you. I think for me, I didn't feel as proud, I think, of everything I've done until my parents saw it. And until I kind of saw it through their eyes, that's when I was like, oh, like I'm actually achieving something. Because I've had a lot of fun stuff going along the way, a lot of collaborations with big brands, and they've been cool for me to do. But it wasn't until I took my parents into Target to shop for Millennial Loteria. And they hadn't been here in like 3 years because of the pandemic, and they hadn't been able to see it. So once they went to Target, they saw it on the shelf. My mom was like asking people to bring her like one of those step ladders, because she was like, I want to grab it. And she's like 5'2", you know, like she's very short. And so, you know, she wanted to grab it. She wanted to take pictures with it. And that's when I felt, wow, I really like, I'm making them proud. I really made it.
That's so sweet.
But I think to the community as well, like the people that follow me, once we got into Target, I think for them it was like, that is major. That's like a huge accomplishment. And now we're at Walmart. So I think for me, those have been the moments where like all this struggle that I've had, like starting the business from when it was just in my apartment and I had like my little Guatemalan sweatshop, just me like wrapping things up, sending them out, to now being able to just kind of like relax and just know it's on the shelves, you know, and it's just there. And if someone who's Latino is walking to the store and sees it, they'll feel represented, they'll buy it. And then, so that's when I feel proud. And when people tag me when they play, they're like playing with their families and then they tag me on, you know, with the Murillo Loteria. That's when I know I've made it because people are inviting me into their home.
Totally.
You know, that's a different thing.
I have it. I played it over the holidays with my family. I bought it for people. So it's great. I love it. Yeah.
That makes me so happy. I told her, she's like, I have your game too.
Yeah.
It's on my coffee table, you know. Ready to be played
That's
all
awesome.
the time. So my motivator was like, I wanted my niece and like these young girls to know like, hey, I don't have to just sit at a job where I'm unhappy, where I'm not growing, when I don't feel fulfilled. And I wanted them to know like they could start something. And like if I could influence that in like younger generations and my niece, and I was like, then, you know, I want to do Cipota Coffee even more. And I think one of my biggest or like proudest accomplishments with Cipota Coffee is like having young girls come into Arroz and Fun where I serve Cipota Coffee and being like, oh my God, I saw there's Cipota Coffee here and like I came and you've inspired me and like I've done this because I saw you do it. And I think that was one of my goals with starting this. And so seeing it actually play out is like, it's been like a beautiful like experience.
It is really cool what you're saying about like having people come up to you and say, hey, you've inspired me to do this. Because I didn't think about it in that way of Millennial Loteria when I started doing the game and selling it. But I've had other people who now are also game makers, like you know, like Yo Sabo the game, and then also Tragos. So Tragos actually reached out to me about getting into Target, and I was like, I love Carolina who runs Tragos the game, and I was like, you know what, let's figure this out. So I got her in touch with my publisher, and I was like, I love this game, it's really great or whatever. But she's trying to get into Target, but it is a huge amount of work to get into one of these like places. It's huge. It's like we're talking like 70,000 copies that they're buying at once, and they want to make sure you want to have them. And so it's great for business, but it's a lot of work. And I got her in touch with my publisher, and then now she's at Target. She just launched.
That's awesome.
Other games are reaching out, and so I think it's been one of those things where it's been cool to open doors for other people because there's more space on the shelves for more than just one Latino game, you know? And I was just kind of like just the first one that was there that was visible, and now there's just, Target has seen how much, you know, we're selling, has seen how excited people get, and so they're bringing other games too that serve the community, and that's really a part of success as well.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's why we really have to support each other. Like, it's, I mean, and not for our own personal benefit, of course, but like to see like how that impacts like the next person in your line of work or whatever it is, right? So it's like the more that we're out there and like showing these like gatekeepers, for lack of a better term, the fact that we exist, that we want these types of products, that we want to support them, the more that they'll continue to open doors for us.
I think that's it. All it takes is one of us to get into that door and just to hold it open for like other people to come up. Because a lot of the opportunities I've ever received from collaborations to like, I don't know, being on TV or anything that we've done for Millennial Loteria has come from other Latinos that are there in the industry. I rarely get any, you know, like emails about stuff with Millennial Loteria from someone who's not a Latino, you know, and but we're everywhere. We're everywhere. Like one time I was on the Kelly Clarkson show.
Oh, what?
Because because one of the producers on there followed me, and he was Latino. He's one of the only Latinos there, and he was like, I know this person. Let me bring him up. And it's been like that with there's all these different places where you think, oh, only white people work there, but there's one or two Latinos in there that snuck in behind the scenes that are pulling us up,
Wizard of Oz vibes.
Exactly. And so I think that's the cool part about the community too, that they're very supportive for us as business owners because they know the hustle and how hard it takes.
Yeah, for me it's like finding like us, the fact that like many of us are thinking more about like eating healthier, eating maybe potentially plant-based, and like trying to find that niche of what we're looking for in flavors that still feel nostalgic. Like you're trying to do like Salvadoran coffee, but you're also like inspiring the next generation. So it's like trying to find that in between, which is really cool.
And I'm also like connecting it with my to my parents. Like,
Yeah.
cipota's like the word, you know, like that my dad called me, you know, called my sister, called my niece. So like connecting that and then sharing that with like the younger generations. Yeah. Talked a little bit about obstacles. What is the hardest thing you've had to deal with as a Latino entrepreneur in business?
For me, the hardest obstacle has been dealing with other people who may not know what loteria is. I think it's always when you have those gatekeepers that didn't grow up playing the game, you have to explain to them what it is. And so that's been hard. But I think from the background side of it, like what I'm doing behind the scenes, just finding manufacturing to create a game was really hard for me because when we started doing it, I was manufacturing here in LA and it was very expensive to do. And so when our first round of we went on Amazon, we were like, okay, we gotta go manufacture this in like China, which wasn't the best thing, you know? And I was like, oh, I don't wanna do this. But we did that first run, that sold on Amazon. And then I was like, okay, now we have enough budget. Now we have enough capital that we can manufacture in Latin America. And so we tried manufacturing in Mexico. Now we have manufacturing in Colombia, which is really cool for me that we're actually supporting people in Latin America, you know, manufacturing this game. There's families that have been fed because people are buying this game, you know, which is really cool.
Awesome. And
then the products too, the materials that we use now, getting to that was really hard because I wanted to make stuff that was good for the environment. So now all our cars, they're all made from recycled sugarcane, which was but again, getting to those moments is hard because you have to go through a couple of obstacles, you know, to get to the point where you are. So I think for a lot of entrepreneurs they're like, maybe your first version of your product isn't the best one or the one that's gonna, but as you keep growing, you can keep improving and making something that's, you know, that feels like what you want to do. It doesn't have to be perfect at first, but now I feel like I'm in a place where, okay, my game is contributing, it's doing something good, and it's also, you know, being manufactured in Latin America. Yeah.
That's
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What about you, Jocelyn?
I think for me, some of the bigger challenges are really access to capital, you know, as I'm trying to scale and because I shift from food service this year to now a product line, it's almost like I'm a new business, you know? So if I go to a bank, if I go to so-and-so, it's I don't have enough track record to show. And I'm like, but I've done all this other cool stuff. It doesn't matter because you haven't done it with this stuff, you know? So that's been kind of challenging and trying to figure out how I scale what I'm doing now. And just as a woman of color, networking, getting out there, I've tried going to events with investors and typically it's a lot of white men, you know, and it's how do you kind of get in there and talk about what you're doing in a way that they can resonate with? And so it's, you know, it's a little tricky sometimes navigating that world, but it's also sometimes what you need to do to try to figure out how to grow and scale. So if anybody's out there and you're a Latina and you're looking to invest in a food product, CPG food product, hit me up because I'm looking for you and I just can't find you yet. So, yeah.
I agree with the capital is one of the biggest obstacles. But I also, for myself, it's marketing. I feel you know, you use social media, but it's so saturated that trying to push yourself through to get people's attention was one of the hardest things when starting out.
Yeah.
And it took a while, you know, to get that traction going, but yeah, that's.
What advice would you give other entrepreneurs who are looking to start up?
I would say put yourself in front of the camera. Don't be afraid if you're starting social media. It's free to post on social media. Anybody can do it. And so I think don't be afraid to put yourself in front of the camera. I think for me that was a turning point where people started to not only support the product, but they started to support me. And they've seen all the struggles that I've gone through. They've seen how I've, you know, kind of went from being in my apartment, you know, to now selling somewhere else. They've seen that journey. And that's really powerful and important for people to see. So I would say don't be afraid to put yourself in front of the camera. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm behind the scenes. Just start talking about your product. You know, if you're excited and it's a good product, it'll connect with people.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
Even for me.
Yeah.
I think the advice I would give is don't be afraid to start without knowing everything. You're gonna learn as you go, and that might trigger that imposter syndrome, but doesn't mean you're a failure. You just gotta learn and keep asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Keep learning.
Google's free.
Yeah.
You know?
And
Yeah.
asking questions. Like we said, we're here. We're putting ourselves out here for people who want to, you know, follow behind us and starting their own ventures. And we're here to answer questions. You know, we're not gatekeeping anything.
I mean, you'd even be surprised at like who will respond to emails. Like I've reached out to people who I'm like, this person is never going to respond, and I'm like, can I get 20 minutes of your time to ask you questions?
Yeah.
And then they do, and I meet with them, and I'm like, I never thought I would meet with you. I think for me, like the advice I would give is probably to do something that you really are passionate about.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes people choose something that's like, this might be lucrative, this might look cool, but as an entrepreneur, like you're working all the time, you know, like even on your days off, you're still dedicating a little bit of time to something to do with your business, content, capturing everything. And so because you're dedicating so much time to it, like you should really care about it. You should be passionate about it. You should wake up and like already be like, all right, this is what I want to do for today. Because if you don't, it's going to be a grind and you're not going to love it. So yeah, I think it has to be something that like you feel the drive for already.
Yeah.
Agree. That was my thing too. You know, you try to find, and I feel like my brain's always been like entrepreneurial, and I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? And then I was like, coffee gets me excited every morning. So now it's like part of my job is like going to taste coffee samples and like, and like there's like a euphoria to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Your house also gets filled with a lot of products. I'm sure you
Yeah.
have lots of coffee, lots of spices. I have like
Yeah.
a whole loteria room.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're gonna have it in your house. So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. I love food. Like I've always been obsessed with food, and I always thought it was a hobby. And I was like, what else can I do? Like I was doing design work and doing all this other stuff too. And it's like, but wait, actually, like I always keep coming back to this thing that I love.
Yeah.
And why don't I just do that?
Yeah.
And yeah, it works out.
Do what you love.
You can find me, Cipota Coffee, on Facebook, Instagram at Cipota Coffee, and at cipotacoffee.com.
You can find Millennial Loteria on Instagram or TikTok, and if you want to buy the game, you can click the link on our bio, or you can go to Target, Walmart, or hundreds of other Latino-owned stores across the United States.
You can find Todo Verde on Instagram and TikTok, and you can also find us at all Bristol Farms locations if you're in California, on Amazon, on our website, at the link in bio.